Are you an HR department of one, trying to figure out how to balance task and strategy while keeping up with changes in regulatory compliance? Do you need a fresh outlook on old topics? Then stop what you're doing, grab your coffee, and get ready to recharge. If you have people, you have problems to solve and things to do. Your host is Brenda Neckvattel, a 20-year human resource professional, ready to explore the HR industry with veterans of business and life with fresh eyes and new ideas. Learn about the rapidly evolving changes in employment law around the country, as well as new tactics to deploy and build engagement in your workforce. If you're looking to implement new practices to make your job easier in HR, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best Practices in Human Resources podcast. My name is Brenda Neckvattel, and if you are a first-time listener, I am so excited to welcome you to the show. Thank you so very much for joining in. And if you are a returning listener, thank you, oh my gosh, for continuing to stay on this journey. It's absolutely fantastic and very, very fortunate.
I am so excited today because I am not only joined by the woman that she and I had an instant friendship, an instant connection, and obviously an awful lot in common, but she's uber smart, and she agreed when I had this wacky idea to do a podcast, and we said, oh yeah, we're going to do a podcast, and then we're going to invite some really cool people, and I am so grateful that she agreed, and she's on this journey with me, and we've been able to cajole and encourage and sometimes charm people to chat with us just like today. So Brenda, you are the catalyst for getting today's partner. I just want to thank you.
Well, no problem. Well, hello and welcome to you too. I mean, holy cow, that was... You blow me out of the water with introductions sometimes. I don't always know what to say. It's just very humbling. But so Chayra is awesome. She is our in-house PR guru. She is just a phenomenal human being. We did meet together in Las Vegas in January 2018 at SHOT Show. If you've been following us up until this point, you've heard our history of how we connected. And literally, thank God. I mean, we're like country bookends. We've got one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, and you poor people are in the middle between the two of us and our load of energy. So we're super excited. I don't even know who's more excited, her or me. So, me, yeah, I know, right? I am. I'm like googly stupid about this, because we've got somebody very special that's joining us today. Okay, so can I tell him yet?
Yes, you
really?
Can. Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Seriously? I'm so excited. Okay, so backstory on this. So, we spent what, 3 months really designing this show. About that.
Believe it or not.
Shut up. We spent 3 months designing the show. Ms. Positive over here. Anyway, and we started talking about, it's like, well, we should have a guest. And then we're like, but you know what? The first guest needs to be super special. I mean, this is a new show. I mean, you want it to be memorable. You want it to make an impact, and you want it to be really, really super important. So I came up with an idea, and she was like, "Oh yeah, love it." And then we have no idea how to get a hold of this person. And I'm like, "Well, aren't you the PR lady?" So after that laughter, we're like, okay, so we drafted this letter, we reviewed it, and sent it out to what we thought was the email address, which it turned out that it actually was. We just didn't hear anything back. So I thought, okay, so we're not quitters by any stretch of the imagination. So there I am. It's about, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning. I can't sleep. you know what that's like. You're laying in bed, you got your cell phone, like you're holding it up over your head, and you're just starting to get tired enough to where you lose, it slips and it smacks you in the face. That was about where it was. And I'm like looking and looking, and I went to the guy's website, and I saw this. It's a submit your question here, and I went, bingo, found one. So I did. I submitted a question. It had nothing to do with what we wrote in the letter, and made it very
Why did you
simple.
ignore us?
Yeah, I was like holding my breath, and I'm like, you know what? If the guy responds, great. If not, then we got to go back to the drawing board. So sure enough, I get an email the next, and I'm just like, oh, and I decided that I wanted to just not tempt fate and not like ruin it for Chayra. So set up the meeting and called her up, and I said, you're not going to believe this. And sure enough, he agreed to be on the show, and we are super, super excited about this. I couldn't sleep for like 2 days before we actually brought him on to do the interview, because we're just so excited. It really means a lot to us, and we're so thankful that he decided to join. So, did I miss anything?
Well, I think you missed the fact. Are you going to give some bio on him, or?
Well,
I mean, he is an extraordinary speaker and
yes.
coach.
Yes.
I'm just priming it for you, darling. You continue on.
You go ahead. You lay all the compliments about him you want right now. Go for it, because you're right. He is.
Well, first of all, he's a hero. He served in the U.S. military. He actually, he is the most effervescent and brilliant. I consider him a poet, and shockingly, he has his minor in college was like poetry or literature or something like that. He goes and he talks to Fortune 100 companies. He talks to professional sports teams. He talks to executives from around the world on how to employ excellence and how to beat the negative insurgency. He is a phenom who will only get bigger and bigger, and we are so grateful that he decided to chat with us.
That's right. And he's talking to us.
Yeah.
And we didn't scare him off. Even better. So, without further ado, friends, thank you very much for joining us again. If you have joined us for the first time, this is literally going to be one hell of a show. Buckle up, grab some coffee, grab whatever you need to consume. I don't want to know what it is. But welcome to the show, David Rutherford. Today we have David Rutherford, also known as Frog Logic. We've got some great questions for him about how he transitioned from a career from the U.S. Navy SEAL teams to a business owner and an entrepreneur. And we're going to get into some banter amongst the three of us about how challenges of business exist and how to learn more about how he navigates the PR and the HR waters, because we're going to put him on the spot. That's just what we do. And then as well as just seeing how helping business reaches...
No HR issues! You know what those are called? Those are called liberty incidences. And they're handled very differently in our world.
Yeah, well, we won't send you the captain's mess. You'll be fine.
Oh, thank goodness.
So anyway, so we're going to see what it is that he sees in helping businesses reach their pinnacle levels of success. And as you can tell, we're already off to a great start here. But it is with great excitement that we introduce David Rutherford to the show. Welcome, my friend. How the hell are you?
I am above dirt and nobody's shooting at me. And so it is a glorious, glorious day. Ladies, it is a privilege and an honor to be on your show, to be the first guest on your show.
Yeah, well, you can hear us giggling. You're like, we're good. We're all set.
Love it. Well, thank you.
No problem. So before we start, though, we got 2 rules. We only have 2 rules on the show. Usually it's just one.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I know, right? I mean, we can put them in a pop-up version for anybody who needs it. But so rule number 1 is that we don't talk politics on this show.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes. And then rule number 2, when we have a guest on, you can swear.
Well,
that's why I couldn't wait to have you on, Dave.
Well, hot damn.
Chayra's all looking forward to it.
And I was, I was the one who on TNQP, I was the one who didn't swear the most. You know that,
That
right?
is very true.
Yeah, so you got a good shot at having a semi-clean show.
Right. It will be ticked on explicit for sure this time.
Right,
But
right.
it's all good, right? Oh my gosh. So Chayra is tasked with a very important question about the title of our show.
All right.
Yes. So, our show is set up like a joke. We are not jokes, okay, contrary to how we sound sometimes. But, okay, Dave, we need you to finish the tagline. So, a
Yep.
PR lady and an HR lady walk into the bar. Bop, bop, bop. That's your cue for
Yep.
punchline. What is it?
A PR lady and an HR lady walk into a bar. One sits down and tries to sell you a lawsuit.
Wah, wah, wah.
That's a tough one.
Right?
Like the other ones are so much easier, like a Navy SEAL, a priest, and a gay guy walking to a bar. Those are
Okay,
so
so
much
finish
easier.
that one. I want to hear
No, this is a family show.
Yeah, that's right. Kids understand swearing. They don't understand grown-up concepts.
Right?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well.
Nowadays.
So says the one who doesn't have any children, right?
Right.
That's so funny. All right, so we're gonna do something fun. You have been, well, you were on Team Never Quit podcast for, was it 3 years or 3.5 years?
3.5 years about. Yeah.
3.5 years. So you guys used to do something called the Mad Minute.
Mad Minute, baby.
you-
Oh, yeah.
That would run anywhere between 12 to 15 minutes.
It seemed like 1 minute the whole time. I don't
So-
know. All of us have been around enough explosives to where I think our space-time continuum is a little shot out.
I mean,
So
nothing.
it seemed like a minute.
Yeah. So we're gonna do something a little fun, and it's not a Mad Minute, but it's designed to just kind of have a blast and really kind of get a chance to see if we know you, even though we've never met. Chayra's never met you. I've never met you. This really has been at length our first time actually having any conversation whatsoever. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this based off of what we think we might know. How's that
All
sound?
right. Yeah, I can't wait for this. This is going to be interesting.
So, Chayra, would you like to kick off your first question?
Yeah, I do. And you know what? I kind of rewrote some of the questions you asked because Dave should know this. Okay, Dave, going back to your medic days, IV or IO?
Oh, man.
Ah!
That's a tough one. It depends on what the situation is, right? If they're hypovolemic, then I've got to jam something in their chest, right? Right in their breastplate. If they're let's see, if they're dehydrated from a late night of drinking, I'd probably do the breastplate again. On the battlefield, I think I think an IV is always the least invasive way you could apply fluids. Although if there's a lot of transport required, then IO is the way to go, because having that thing anchored into a bone, and it's not going to get ripped out a lot during the unfortunate brutality of transporting a casualty. Oh God. Oh God.
I'm sure glad I didn't ask about Crike or chest guard.
I would have told you about 25 stories about a pig and a goat.
That's your warm up, okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Now that we can see Dave literally twitching, this will be a little bit lighter. Are you ready? Black Sabbath or Three Doors Down?
Black Sabbath all the way, all the way. Yeah, no, I'm definitely a retro guy. I'm a child of the '70s, so Three Doors Down. I don't know what that would make me, but certainly doesn't reign with the king, Mr. Ozzy Osbourne himself. So
Very cool.
Okay.
All right, your turn.
Okay. I'm like, I'm asking a million questions. Would you rather set foot on Mars or the moon?
Wow, this is a great question because my fiance and I just recently got into. There's a Netflix special out there with about a gentleman named Bob Lazar.
He
And
lived here, where he lived here.
did he really?
Yeah, Bob, because I'm in Nevada, so
Right.
I'm not too far from Dreamland.
Yeah. So I watched this. First, it caught me. I was watching Joe Rogan's podcast with him on it, and I was like, "Wait, what? What did he just say?" And then I went and watched this incredible documentary about him, which legitimately, he believes that he worked on a UFO for 7 months, and at what is it, S-54 or whatever it was, and S4,
Yep.
and talks about seeing 9 different flying saucers and all that. So, although the moon is pretty, I mean, super cool. Don't get me wrong. I've interviewed a bunch of astronauts, but stepping on Mars now we're talking. That's definitely like legit right there.
Well, just real quick, if you liked Bob Lazar's story, look into the story of astrophysicist David Adair. Pretty damn fascinating. So I think you and your fiance might enjoy that discussion too.
So my guess was going to be Mars. I would have figured if you went to the moon, my guess was that you were going to do Mars, but if you went to the moon, it probably would to have recorded new footage of the moon landing.
Oh God, no! I want to see the secret alien base that's on the backside of the moon. Everybody keeps talking about. Just fascinated with this alien concept. I think that's pretty rad.
There you go. Chayra, which one did you guess, Mars or moon?
I figured Mars, but you know what? Now that you said alien, you said one of my favorite words. So yeah, aliens or not.
Yeah, I think we got to believe there's some aliens out there for sure.
Cool. All right. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brenda.
No, we tend to step on each other a little.
Oh my God. If I did all I could to not let Marcus get a word in edgewise.
Nice. She was on the other foot today. Go ahead.
Thank you.
The wizard would have to hold up a sign and be like, "Be quiet now." And I'd be like, "Okay, check, Roger."
All right. So here's another question for you. For now, team guys go to a lot of countries. They go to a lot of countries, and it will never be disclosed as to which ones. But if you could go back and Chayra, I want you to figure out which one, and then you can answer, Dave. Would you rather go to China or Greece for fun? So I'm going to say Greece. Chayra, what do you think?
Well, you may have been to both places.
But which one do you think for fun?
China.
Well, I've been to China and ran the Great Wall of Marathon there, and that was certainly no fun whatsoever. So I have not been to Greece, and if I were to go, I would definitely not run a marathon. That's for sure. So I'm going to have to, by deductive reasoning, have to go with Greece as the top pick for fun over China.
Nice. Well, I will tell you, I've been to China. I've been to the Great Wall, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's a heck of a lot skinnier than you think it would be.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's not an easy thing to traverse at all. And when I was at China, the physicians that we were with were always trying to get us to eat different foods. I mean, when we say different foods, it's like when they kill something, they eat the whole animal from stem to stern, right?
Yeah.
And so they would try and con me into eating things and say, "Oh, it'll make you beautiful," and it just, they want to smoke your tobacco. It's made from the side of a tree. Oh, it'll make you beautiful. So that was my first experience with Rocky Mountain oysters over at the the wall.
Oof.
Wow.
Oof.
So I'm with you. I would choose Greece.
I'll tell you what, over in the Asian continent, they have the most interesting food. I'll give them that by far, right? I mean, I mean, the stuff that they would drop down on plates, definitely had to take a step back and go, is this going to be worth it? But, after a few years in the teams, you develop a pretty good goat gut, so you have a little bit of a sense of adventure in you.
I've heard those stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. All right,
Okay.
lady girl.
Okay. William Blake or Elizabeth Barrett Browning?
That's tough. Man, it's been a long time since I've read either one. I guess I'd go with William Blake, right? He wrote that beautiful poem about winter, didn't he? That was him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to go with William Blake.
He's written a couple pretty poems.
Yeah, one or two.
Exactly. They still persist. Along that kind of genre, I mean, because you minored in poetry, right?
I did. Among other things, I think I had about 5 different minors when I was at Penn State, from English lit to poetry, art history, sociology, and psychology. So, yeah.
So you always like people. No, I could tell through your post on social and that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have some literature background and communicative. So you're probably a Gemini too. That's just an aside.
No, I'm a Leo.
No.
Yeah,
When's your birthday?
July 24th, right on the cusp there.
I'm right on your heels.
Yeah.
My birthday falls on a very heavy day in the community, and it's on the 6th.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a big day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
Well, it's also a good day to celebrate their memories too, and
Absolutely.
your yeah.
Absolutely. Every birthday, and that happened on my 40th birthday. Every birthday, I go out and I do something that reminds me that I'm alive.
Yeah, amen. That's what they would all want for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For
Okay.
sure.
On to something fun. All right. So you ready, Chayra?
Yeah, your turn.
Right. So next question. Chayra, do you think which historical moment Dave would like to have been a part of? That if he could go back in time. You ready?
Oh, this is going to be good.
The surrender of the Japanese on the deck of the USS Missouri, or have backstage passes at the fall of the Berlin Wall celebration next to David Hasselhoff singing in concert.
Well, that's an epic challenge right there. Well, I mean,
Gosh, it's Hasselhoff.
One is signaling the end to the most tragic event in human history, and the other is seeing David Hasselhoff. So I don't know, the weight of those two things it's literally tearing me apart right now as I try and reflect upon this. I'm gonna have to go. It's by a slight edge. I'm gonna have to go with the Japanese surrender.
Well, if you were there, you would have seen his flashing jacket too.
Yeah. Oh,
Slight
man.
lit jacket. All right, girlfriend, your shot.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I picked the Japanese. Sorry, even though it was my question, I picked the Japanese. What did you pick?
Who? Me?
Hey, you.
No, I was being glib when I said Hasselhoff. Who wouldn't pick the Japanese?
Yeah. That's a big day. That's a big moment.
Yeah.
Just a little. Well, and my dad, well, he wasn't in Japan, but in World War II, he was in China. So
Wow.
he was pretty darn close. And he's still around at a cranky 91. We call him Krusty.
Krusty.
Krusty Chayra.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, Morse code or interpretive dance, David?
Interpretive dance all day long. That's easy. Morse code is boring. Can't you imagine, if that's how we actually said hello to each other? We just get some crazy stuff and putting it out, and everybody had their own beautiful, unique hello, and it was all dependent upon your mood, right? On how much you were going to get into it, right? And then definitely your cultural background. You could throw that, I could throw a little Highland Scottish dancing in there.
Oh, are you Scottish?
Yeah, Rutherford.
Well, my mum was from Scotland, so
Really?
Klansman, darling.
The fellow Klansman.
So, okay, Miss Brenda.
You can roll your R's.
That's it. It's the easiest accent to imitate. You just gotta roll your R's excessively long. Arr. That's it. I'm Scottish. How are you doing? Arr.
Really am.
All right, so last one. You ready? Chayra, left side of the plane or right side of the airplane?
Ooh.
And there's a reason behind this.
Oh, damn.
'Cause
Left.
Left? I'm going with right.
Jeez, I fly so much. I'm just happy if I get a seat. Honestly, I'm just happy I have a seat. I'm lucky if it's an aisle seat, and then I'm super lucky if my platinum points hit on something and I actually get a first class ticket. Yeah, that's it. And then it just doesn't matter, right? You can be in the aisle, you can be on the left, the right, you can be up against a bulkhead. It really doesn't matter.
So I was guessing the right side of the plane as a preference.
Well, tell me why. Tell me the basis of the question.
Because team guys always have a methodology of where they sit in a room.
Interesting.
Always.
I get you. A plane is tough, though.
It is.
I mean, I actually do try and get in an exit row every time, just so I can help with that whole process, because I don't have much confidence in like the I don't know, the dork who is sitting there who doesn't really understand when you ask, are you ready, willing, and able to help in the event of an emergency? And they're like, huh? What'd you say? Huh? So I always tend to like to be in those spots, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Is every time I go out and I have a meeting with a team guy or we talk about business something or other, I always have to sit with my back to the door.
Yeah, I mean, that's a given, right?
But it's amazing where they position themselves in the room, or when we go to the movies in the theaters. I mean, it's interesting to just pick up on those sort of things. And there's no even, like, sometimes it's not even here, Brenda, you sit here. It's two hands on my arms and I'm getting moved. It's like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Going here.
It's a little bit odd. It's all about that collective programming, right? Sure. How do you allow it to imprint in such a significant way, and then the problem is you can't shake it, right? All these little, these thousands of different pieces of useless tactical information that we have stored, you can't escape it, unfortunately, and it makes you a little paranoid, I guess.
Absolutely.
I don't know that stress inoculation because I mentioned that my dad was in World War II in Korea, and he was also a cop in Los Angeles Sheriff's Office when he got out. So as a little kid, he always, my nickname's Toots, you to sit where you can see the door and pay attention. And I was attacked in high school, and it was only my situational awareness that probably saved my life. So it may seem insignificant, but at some point, hopefully, I mean, for you, Dave, it's different, but for the rest of us civilians, it comes back. So, Dave, it looks like you spent 8 years in Naval Special Warfare. And when I'm looking at your bio, it said as a SEAL student. Is that kind of a civilian phrase for buds and the beginning?
Yeah, it's for them to understand, because my buds career was 15 months. So, it gives me an opportunity to when everybody always wants to talk about buds and what it meant to be a student and going through. Most people, their perception of what the job entails is so limited, but yet everybody's seen the Discovery channel Class 234, and so I write that into it so it fits that description.
Okay. And then it also says in your bio that you were a combat paramedic. You operated in both the Middle East and South Asia, and you served as an instructor. So for 8 years, you served in the NSW community, and you retired in 2003, excuse me, where then you opened your motivational training concepts titled Team Frog Logic. And so my questions to you really relate to HR and PR and kind of what you do under Team Frog Logic. And it looks like one of your goals was 100 or 10 million peeps in 10 years' time. You're going to touch them with this message. And it's more than a message. It's like an initiative, a campaign. What was the genesis? I mean, did you just have one of those moments and you went, hey, I'm going to start this company because it's kind of tough to get out of the operational community and buy toilet paper at Walmart?
It was, when I first got out in the summer of '03, my main focus was I got my real estate license. My mom was a real successful realtor in Boca Raton, and we were going to join forces, and I was going to try and help her with modernize her marketing and the whole thing, and help her use the internet a lot better. And within the first month of trying to be a realtor, it was just such a not a good fit for me. I was struggling with the transition pretty substantially. I was engaged at the time, and after a month with my mom, that didn't last, and then I switched and I got hired by a domestic security firm out of Michigan, and we would sell camera systems to strip malls and guard work and stuff like that. But it was also on the pretense that I would be able to start a little subcontracting company to go after some of the contracts downrange in Iraq and Afghanistan that were, big time contracts. Although my employer kind of misled me and to believe that after writing my very first 36-page business plan, which was a delight.
Like waxing your legs for the first time.
Literally,
Yeah.
It was, I gotta say it was miserable to do, but it was one of the greatest educations I've ever did, because it was the first time, I ever thought about business in its totality and what you need to assess, right? From market evaluations to marketing to hiring to insurance, and how do you insure 6 team guys in a foreign country while they're using foreign purchased weapons. Lloyd's of London didn't even want to touch that.
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say, or more or less, who would want to insure that?
Right, exactly.
And then you're talking about government contracting, period, because that's a whole different beast to learn.
Thankfully, they had done a bunch of domestic contracts and stuff, so I had guidance there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I did this thing. I had 2 guys that come out and help, start running it. And they just said, listen, this is not what we do. It's too dangerous. We don't want to go overseas. So after that, that kind of caved in. And then I was really struggling emotionally and mentally at that time. My engagement was breaking up, and she didn't want anything to do with, dealing with an ex-Navy SEAL who is struggling, and I don't blame her. And so then I got a kind of a call out of the blue from a buddy I'd gone through training with, a guy I was in my first platoon with, and he's like, hey man, let's, I got a job, me, maritime interdiction program overseas. Are you in or are you out? And I was like, I'm in. 8 days later, I was in Azerbaijan.
Wow.
And so that initiated about almost 2-year cycle with Blackwater. And it was in working for Blackwater. I was on a trip to Afghanistan, my second trip to Afghanistan. And I just got hit like a ton of bricks that I didn't, it wasn't, I think it was some definitely divine intervention. I think it was God playing a big role. But I realized that I wasn't going to be able to make a long-term difference in anybody's life by holding a gun. And that was kind of this gigantic wake-up call for me that, this massive investment I had made in terms of developing a skill set isn't the type of skill set that has long-term benefits for human beings, whether you're the holder of the gun or you're on the receiving end of the
recipient of the love. Forthcoming.
Or as we like to call it in the teams and special operations, delivering the hate, right? Which is exactly what it does. So I fortunately on this trip, I was working with the counter drug team. We had done a hit up in the northern Afghanistan and Mazar-Shari, and it was, pretty benign, nothing went down. But it was in that moment that I, just saw these Afghan kids, and in an instant was immediately inspired to change my life in order to assist children, to give them whatever it is they needed. And at that time, I'd done very little child psychology. I'd done a little B.F. Skinner and stuff in college, but nothing in depth at all. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to figure out how to help kids. And initially it was going to be, I wanted to help kids in war-torn environments. And so I was going to I looked at Doctors Without Borders, USAID, Red Cross, all this, and just team guys and nonprofits don't really jive well. And so we're great. We're great. We're great as poster children to raise money. So I quickly realized that wasn't going to be it. And after that deployment, I came home, and my research just led me into the really burgeoning needs that our kids were facing in America. And that's out of that, Frog Logic was born. And that was the winter of 2005. That spring, 2006, I started talking. I think I did my first kids program in April. I worked with a YMCA locally and did a kids program. And then I worked with some foster care kids. I did a whole month program with them. That was fun. And then I wrote my first book, which was a children's book on developing self-confidence. And that was it. And Frog Logic was born. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd work with over 50 Fortune 100 companies. I never imagined I would have, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. I never imagined I would be the motivational performance coach for the Boston Red Sox, and win a World Series. So, but it all stemmed from just the innate, or I shouldn't say innate. Yeah, I guess it's innate. I was a lifetime of servitude is innate, I guess. It all stemmed from that I wanted to keep serving, but I didn't want to do it in a way that intimidation or fear. The servitude is based in a fear-based model, and so that's how Frog Logic was started.
So, yeah, I love it. So I have a quick question. So what do you think your gift was that allowed all of these opportunities to come your way? I mean, you're doing, you're writing and talking about self-confident things that, you speak of, but what do you think that root gift is?
So I believe that God, I was blessed with two big gifts as a person. One, my artistic ability. I've always just been able to draw, and I always just have seen things in a very artistic way. I guess that part of my brain is either highly developed or overdeveloped or whatever you want to say. Definitely not my mathematical prowess, having failed algebra like 10 times, my 11-year-old
toes to count.
Oh my God. My 11-year-old already knows more math than I do. Thank God for QuickBooks, right? And so I for that was it. And then the second one, I think I always had this core ability to motivate. I always was the guy, whether I was, the captain of my football teams or student body vice president, and I always just had that sense of I in those moments where somebody needs a boost, I was always a person that was able to provide that. And actually, it saved my career, multiple times in the teams. The most significant one was my second medical role. I got, my first one was my ITBs were real bad in 205. That rolled me out of 205. I rolled into 206. I overtrained and developed stress fractures, and they were going to boot me. I got actually medically dropped by the physician.
Oh, wow.
And it was the base training officer who went over to PTRR, which is the phase before you start first phase, second phase, third. And the guy, he asked the warrant over there, his name was Warrant Officer Rewerts, who was a plank owner at Dev Group, um, just a legend in the teams. He was this ominous man and this presence, but I never thought he acknowledged or even knew I existed. But apparently, what he had told the BTO was that if Rutherford can stay healthy, he's a real team player. And I think it was because, like, when guys would fall back on soft sand conditioning runs, I'd drop back with them and try and push them through. Or, guys were struggling to get their stuff ready because they're brand new, and I'd been there a little while. I'd help, and I just kind of always had that character trait of a natural motivator, and so it made sense for me to kind of hopefully combine those two things with Frog Logic. So to inspire people through a creative, little bit different approach to this whole self-help racket that's out there.
Are you an anomaly in terms of both the teams and how you've been able to kind of transition from the silent operator in many ways to a civilian role that plays a really magnanimous role in, sounds like with kids, but you're doing a lot in the financial services, obviously the Fortune 100s. And let's talk about, really, I have so many questions. I just think your answer was so awesome. This perception that people have of what especially naval special warfare is, and then how do you apply kind of that mystique in the business realm and show who you really are as a human? Is there a disconnect for you? Like, this is the persona, but this is the reality of a team guy in the business world, and certainly for Team Frog Logic?
Those are great questions. I'll start at the beginning. I think team guys are much more eclectic than other groups. And don't get me wrong, I have some Green Beret friends like Evan Hafer at Black Rifle Coffee, a buddy of mine, Brad Christian, who runs the Cipher Brief, who are some brilliant, fantastically creative people. But I think in the teams we get all types, and some really unique people. So I don't think I'm an anomaly in the teams whatsoever. I mean, I remember there's one guy who was in 206 and then 207, graduated 207, grew up in a circus. And that's what we called him, circus. And his dad, it was so funny. The instructors would be like, well, what did you do? And what did you do? And he goes, well, I was a lion tamer. I did trapeze. I took tickets. I cleaned up elephant poop. He did it all because it was this family. And so, and then there were guys that came off Wall Street and had, were making $250,000 a year, but they had this calling, this urge to go. I think it's really initially to prove yourself. And then it morphs much more into something very complicated and much deeper. For me, when I first got out, I could not separate. And I tried both in real estate, doing the domestic security at Blackwater, even for the first many years of Frog Logic. It wasn't until 2012 that I actually began to recognize that this SEAL mentality, although it's very enticing, it opens doors, but it is not very applicable to the regular civilian work world. It just doesn't jive well. And it's not that it's not efficient, and it's not that the systems that we have in place, our SOPs, our tactics, techniques, and procedures, that can't be morphed and applied in a civilian environment. It's just the manner with which we do it, right? Mm-hmm. From the first minute we start to allow the imprinting process to happen, it's done in a very warped way for us. So time immediately becomes warped or skewed. So everything we have to do, you're already out of time. So this urgency that's imposed upon us based on you're timed and everything, you have 2 mile ocean swims, O courses. You just listen. All right, ladies, you've got 2 minutes to the chow hall, right? It's a mile and a half to the chow hall. All right. And they're like, and if you don't make it in 2 minutes, we're going to beat you down once you get to the combat training thing. So you've already failed because it's a physical impossibility to move 125 guys shuffling across the Silver Strand to the chow hall 1.23 miles away or whatever it is in 2 minutes. That's what I think is the greatest asset that organizations can have is there, and people who work together, is to be patient with one another. We are simply not patient people.
Yeah, something that I've seen with the work that I've done in the community, that it kind of the guys fall into one of three kind of classifications. You've got some guys that they're just ready to get out and never have anything to do with the government again. They just want a job. They want normalcy in their life, and I think they're mentally primed to actually take that path and deal with what comes with that. Then you've got guys that they're like, yeah, I still love doing what I do as a team guy, even though I'm no longer going to be one. And then they keep on going down the path of going back into contracting and going back in country and doing what they're trained to do, or they get involved with contracts that continue to train guys to do what they do, right? Then there's the last hat, then there's the last third of it, and that's I feel like a square peg in a round hole trying to look for a job. I really want to do my own thing, and that's the course that they take. So it's that entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and then that continuation of still wanting to be doing what they're trained to do and what they love passionately. And it's the intrapreneurs are the ones that really make, I think everybody makes a shift in their own manner, but they make a much different shift, and their course will look different than anybody else's.
Yeah. That's a brilliant way to dissect it, by the way. That's one of the best ways I've ever heard, for sure. When I first got out, and then Chayra, to continue on, you carry this insignia of the trident with you, and we're taught to earn it every day, so to speak. But when you're earning it in where the rules aren't very set in stone and the rules are radically different than how you had to earn it before, it's a struggle. And back when I got out, man, that silent professional thing was still very much intact.
Peter Four.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And the only one kind of at the time that I was doing it really was the guy named Admiral Smith was out on the speaking circuit. Definitely Dick Marcinko had done more for our community than anybody by writing the Rogue Warrior books. I mean, and it's in what he had done, just in terms of being in the limelight. And then that was it, really. And so when I did it, I figured, all right, I'm starting with kids, so I'm gonna get kind of a pass on it. And then my logo, I didn't have a trident in the logo at all, and wanted to create my own kind of look and feel, and so I was hyper aware and nervous of it. And in fact, only within the last couple years have I relieved myself of any deep-rooted sense of guilt or worry or shame that I'm proselytizing the trident in any way that might be malfeasant to the community. And so, and it's because now, and I remember I had a person, it was like one of my first business, my first corporate speaking gigs, and they were like, hey man, you really need to utilize your trident a lot more to sell what you're talking about here. And I was like, well, and he goes, listen, if you were to go to Harvard and get a Harvard MBA, what's the first thing you're going to tell everybody in your interview process? Hey, man, I went to Harvard. I've got a Harvard MBA. And so I started to learn how to do that. Now, I definitely had some setbacks when I went to work for the CIA.
Did you have an HR moment?
I had a big HR moment.
Were you an HR moment?
Yeah. So I was an HR moment. And so, it was funny. It was like 5 years after my last deployment with them, I finally talked to my buddy who was still there and was real high up. And I'm like, hey, man, do you think it'd be cool if I like drop that in there too, that I taught CIA case officers and was deployed, and he's like, yeah, man, 5 years is good, but just don't talk any details about it, right? And I was like, all right. And thankfully, like a bunch of other guys had already come out and talked about 13 hours had come out, and that really exposed the program that I was a part of, and so. With Oz and Tig and Tonto all out in the media limelight, it made it a little bit easier to do. But I think it's a hard thing for guys, for anybody who get rooted in these heavy identities, right? And these things that are much more than just a job title. These things that you've altered your existence for. To then all of a sudden say, all right, I'm totally cool selling insurance, right? That's going to give me the same sense of value, the same sense of ego, right? The same sense, all these things that we take, kind of to the ultimate extremes, literally and figuratively, to then suppress all that and figure out how to fit in at whatever stage you are in that really brilliantly 3 described places. You're and I think the more institutionalized you are, I mean, I have friends now that, got out at, I have one out at 27. He's a nightmare. I got one out. In fact, one of the biggest tragedies ever was my biggest mentor in the teams got out right when Iraq kicked off, and so he got timed out as a senior chief, and so he went chasing contracting, and then he got sick and injured, and then he got old, and before you know it, his alcoholism got him, and he drank himself to death after 4 years. And so I've seen this challenge for us in so many different ways. And I think the individual that you were talking about, Brenda, the person that has the real passion for creativity and to figure out how to slowly separate themselves, but to do it in a place where they can mimic some of the functional character traits, not the emotional ones, can mimic the functionality, the operational mindset into their own new businesses or co-businesses. Those are the people that I've seen have had the most success.
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes through what's called the dynamic change shift. That's, forming, storming, norming, and performing. We all go through it. And anytime something comes into our worlds, the dynamic of being a human being definitely exists. And what I see, and what I see all the time in doing the work that I do in the community, and I see it in HR, Chayra, I'm sure she sees it on her end with any type of organizational change and structure, but specifically with the teams, is that one, when there's transition, there's not only transition with just the individual, there's transition with the families, because the wives have been waiting for a long time to get their husbands back. We got one team guy that constantly refers to, I have to let go of Uncle Sam's whoopee. Yeah. Because there's a check involved, there's the community, there's the brotherhood, there's the, I got this down in life, the regularity. Yep. I mean, it comes with its share of headaches, right? I got this.
Yeah, but the bombs, the bullets, the death. Yeah,
exactly.
that stuff.
We're on it, but it's the PT, it's the the dynamics that happens in the command, all of that stuff. But then they get out, and it literally is cutting an umbilical cord, and you no longer are part of that. So then you're reflecting on all this time that you spent doing what you're doing, and it's a new identity that in some ways you were ready for, but it's so imprinted in on you that that's the change that has to be made. You're
Yeah.
also your op tempo just in life is different. A team guy's 100% is our 70 to 75 at best. So to ask a team guy to step down just to be in a normal cadence with the rest of life, to go from 100 to 70, 75 is very depressing. It's like,
Yeah.
let's do it. Come on, let's get it done now. And now you've got the wives, because to fill that, guys are going out and they're being ambitious, which is what they should be, because that's how they are. But then the families are like, okay, but you're out now, and we really want you here, present with us.
It's tough, and I think my circumstance once I got married and then I had a child, I was working for the agency and then I started deploying. And for me, it was this profound sense of guilt that, drew me back in, because here all my friends are still working, they're still deploying, and I punched out early. So on a personal note, I always felt this tremendous sense of guilt that I had left the teams too early. And, I didn't think Iraq was going to turn into what it was. And, I'd already seen the politics of Afghanistan. So I was like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm getting out of here. I'm sick of the bureaucracy. I'm sick of the bull, and just, wasn't, and punched out. And then all of a sudden, really had, the opportunity. I'm blessed because I've had a long period of time to grow into it, and a lot of great support. And I think that's a real need. Now, thankfully, there's a lot of programs out there that, like the stuff you're doing, that have a positive impact. But with me back then, there was nothing. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully I had some, real great support from my parents and some friends. So it worked out.
So when you're out there in the business world, what is one of the biggest or the common misconceptions about the industry that you come from, and certainly your skill set as it applies to Team Frog Logic in helping organizations define both their HR operational efficiencies and building their brand and how they want to be perceived out in the public?
Good question. I think every company struggles with culture. That's the number one thing that I see around the country. And whether it's a mega firm like Wells Fargo, who's just been, they've been on their heels and actually on their butts, since the whole big scandal happened with the checking situation for them, and their senior leadership is not doing a great job at rebranding, and so they're still struggling quite a bit. And so culture is the most significant. The challenge for us, though, as team guys, is when people come to me and they go, all right, I want to turn my sales team into the Navy SEALs of what X industry, right? And they're like, can you help us do that? And I'm like, sure, go get me an IBS rubber boat, put it in your break room, fill it with ice water, and anytime anybody screws up, go make them hit the boat and fill it with ice water, right? And I literally watch the HR people like cringe as I say that. And
convulse.
It literally convulse is the appropriate term, right? And I actually, when I first started doing corporate stuff, I was so naive to believe that would work. And that, why not? Why can't we establish a similar hierarchy and a similar cause and effect or consequence structure that we have in the military, in this civilian organization? And I was horrible. And a lot of times I'd have people go, that's great, but it doesn't work here. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Just beat them down, tell them you're going to dock them half their pay, and and they're like, no, it's not the way it works, you idiot. So it took me a long time to figure out that it doesn't work. The components that do work are a greater sense of peer evaluation, which we have at one of the highest levels, right? Whether you're a new guy or you're a guy with 8 platoons, if you're not doing it correctly, you have a whole platoon, a whole command that's around to help you figure out how to do it. Now, the manner by which we do it in the SEAL teams doesn't work, but the concept is similar. And I think we've really gotten away from that in many businesses, right? The line of communication in terms of helping one another, or OJT, on the job training, those are really, because every company is running lean now, for sure. I mean, they're expanding, but they're not expanding in key strategic places. They're just saying, hey, I need you to do this and this too, right?
Yeah, they kind of figured that out when the market crashed, and it's like, hey, we can pile more work on top of people and not compensate them. And although there's some companies that have gotten away from that, but yeah, it's still out there.
It's very pervasive, and so as a result, I think people are so taxed, and companies have really moved away from these very baseline concepts, Monday morning briefs, Friday afternoon debriefs, actually keeping good records of performance assistance, right? If somebody, like a senior manager, comes in to help a junior manager, to track that and know how often that's happening, so you can gauge this whether or not the core corporate culture of the organization is being disseminated and trained on a continual basis.
So you're bringing up a really great point. And Chayra, this is where our worlds now amongst the three of us, the Three Musketeers here, where our worlds mesh, because what you're talking about is perfect. Now, what's happening is the documentation process is going digital. Right? Which digital it's only as secure as a company makes it secure. And here's where Chayra would chime in, and I would have to chime in, is that people think that just because you can put something on digitally, that, we can put it on here, and then we can put it on over here. And then all of a sudden you've got, these outside chat sessions that are going on that have nothing that are part of the work but are not sponsored by the work, and that creates problems because now it's open source information. And then you've got individuals that may not be documenting what they should on the company sponsored site. So once something gets figured out that something is now put out there, then I have to step in, and we've got a disciplinary action that has to take place, even though we may have been very clear about it in our policies. And now we have to partner with our PR counterparts to figure out what's the correct messaging.
Yeah. And messaging's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you see, David, social media is driving a lot of the conversations that was once propriety in terms of the executive suite or internally within the organization. Now everybody with a smartphone or an iPad can prophesize, they can, editorialize, even if it's anonymously. So it changes the perception of an agency. It changes its culture. How do you see social media's role in the development of a brand's reputation and its operational implications? Kind of like, Brenda was just saying about HR, PR, and then operationally.
I think it's the trickiest thing that organizations have ever had to deal with by far. Because, before, you disseminate information through this, through the eye of the needle, right? Everything is scrubbed, everything is evaluated, everything is put out. Well, now you're hiring, some 27-year-old communications kid out of school because he built up his own, or she built up their own social media file. They got 100,000 followers and a big YouTube channel or whatever. So they're gurus now. And then they're bringing them in because nobody that's over 40 actually wants to do that for a company, right? and and
Amen.
so you have this young person that really doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about it because most social media is pretty impulsive. And you have a recipe for disaster for sure. I think in certain, it really depends on the industry and depends on the business, the size, because I've seen social media just be abysmal for companies like big financial institutions that I've worked with. Their social media is treacherous. And then, going to work for the mom and pop stuff. I went to work for one of the largest pig farming families in Idaho recently. And they've got this beautiful social media thing that they've built up. And it's one of the kids in the family has stepped in and has taken it over. And really just got to be, it's about oversight like it is with anything. But, to the point where, you don't want to be stifling because you want it to be, because you can tell when a post has been crafted. You can tell when somebody's, pined over the proper terminology for, 3 weeks versus somebody that there's something cool happening, they post it and it makes their company look good,
So do you think there's an opportunity, for fossils like myself to integrate social media? Well, no, because, you talked about that level of impulsivity, and I think that oftentimes comes with youth. We're all there at some point in time where we can benefit as especially your work with financial organizations. They tend to be more staid and not dynamic, to use social media and other communications methods for intel so that they can respond appropriately to say, hey, these are where we're kind of vulnerable, and these are opportunities for us to change and improve and be responsive and authentic? Or do you think that older, more established organizations are resistant to using that intel basically to be better and to serve their constituencies in a more robust way?
Well, so first off, when you're disseminating, right, from a traditional marketing sense, right, you've got a concept, you've got a service, you've got a product, and the idea is to get it in front of people's faces in enough places where you can convert them, right, in particular through the internet now. But with social media, the whole premise of it is interaction. And and that's what you can't do. The human dynamic, the human condition is really, the puzzle that we all have to dissect when it comes to our businesses, right? And so part of social media is the interaction. To someone posts a comment, to be able to immediately get back on there and say, hey, thank you so much for the wonderful words you said about my daily dose of frog logic today. I really appreciate it. Or somebody puts on there, one guy the other day on my post said, this really hit home today. Thank you. It's been 3 years on this day since I buried my daughter, and this really made an impact. So if I just do a heart like on Instagram, instead of writing, my God, my condolences, I'm so sorry for your loss, my prayers and thoughts are with you and her, please stay in the fight. That's a big difference, right? And so I think what you have in this social media dilemma for people is how do you, what are the boundaries of that interaction? And most companies aren't driving interaction. That's not what they're doing. And every now and then you see like some, interesting response that, maybe one corporation posts something and then another one comes in and says, yeah, but we could do this, or, and those cool little one-ups they do.
They snipe on each other's posts.
Snipe each other. Yeah. And listen, those are the things that get posted on the online sites, right? Those are the things that get dropped onto, NPR or Breitbart or CNN or Drudge or Huffington, and so I think what organizations need to do better is really understand their messaging and then give themselves a great left and right lateral limit of what this 28-year-old social media new hire can do for you. So
fresh perspective.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we all need, right? We all need that ongoing objective perspective for us. And especially now with, the millennials have 75 million people, right? They're going to be the largest purchasing generation in human history. And I'll tell you what, to try and hit them with a traditional marketing platform or HR issues, you're talking Swahili.
Yeah. Yes, you are. I mean, just it's and it's interesting that you brought up the generational aspect because I mean, you've got an exiting boomer, right? You got exiting boomers generation. You've got X, which is predominantly us. I think Chayra, you might be on the border of the definition, but I consider you an X because you're a fun wild child. But then you've got Y, and then Z is coming into the play, and Z is actually more like X. But Y, statistically, there's actually two different groups of Y. There's the early adopters, quote unquote, best way you can put it, the founding Y generation, but then there's a back group of it, and the founding Y generation in and of itself is actually very different than the back generation. So when you said messaging, trying to bring somebody in for talent, and you're talking to literally X, Y, and Z now, it's a challenge. It is a real challenge because they'll perceive things differently. Y wants things electronically, which is fantastic. X, we still have this nervous tick when it comes up again. But then Z, they want the electronics, but they want it done faster. And matter of fact, I'm in the process of delivering a workshop on how do you attract talent. But the thing is that the generations want certain things. Like one of the challenges in HR is that they want certain things. So if Generation Z will only spend X amount of time on a job application, well, you can't consolidate a job application and be effective because the employment laws and all the case law, that landscape doesn't change.
No.
It doesn't change quickly. So you still have to you still have to be compliant. And you have to put best practices in place. You have to protect your company. And HR is a very delicate balance of doing what's in the best interest of the employee. And in this case, that would be, finding the right words in the messaging to attract talent, but balance it with how you have to do to protect the company. And it is a very delicate balance. And so trying to get Z to spend more than 5 minutes on an application right now is not a bad thing, but it certainly is the challenge of the day.
Oh, there's immense challenges in every department.
Yep.
Because you guys,
that's just one example.
And that's why I led with the most challenging thing that all companies are facing is this cultural clash that's happening, and it's not happening as a result of any really fundamental destructive change in philosophy. It's just our educational system is spitting out a different mentality now. And so whereas a lot of companies, if you're going to go work for a long running company that has some, been in the game, 15, 20, 25 years, they have they have HR divisions, they have marketing departments, they have training departments. But so many of these, one of the funny statistics that cracks me up is that by the time a kid's 36 now, and I read this like 2 years ago, so it might have changed, but by the time a kid's 36, they've had 6 different careers.
Mm-hmm.
And not just 6 different jobs in the same industry, but 6 different careers. So that has a couple different glaring definitions that support it. I think one is kids are being instilled or inspired to, follow your dream and live out your passion and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, I want to start a gaming company and I want to do that, right? Or I I'm going to start a coffee company or a social media marketing company and all this. And yet, there's no one's out there telling them about the 120-hour weeks, right? And nobody's telling them about eating ramen for your first 6 months because you don't have a dime, because you're pouring every single dime you make from your other job that you're working 45 hours a week into this new job that's why I love Gary Vaynerchuk so much, right? I recently did this event with for On It. It was a Design Your Life event, and Gary V was the speaker on the main night, and I spoke the second night with two other folks. And Aubrey Marcus, the CEO, brings Gary in, and Gary cracks me up because Aubrey is this on this grand journey of discovery, right? Where these people are designing this one. I forget what he was like. I work for this company, but I've got a family and I don't want it's too risky. And Gary V was like, well, then don't do it. If it's too risky and you don't want to feel that, then don't do it. Get it out of your head and move on. Go back to your job and start doing your job better. See if you can move on. And it's hilarious because, and what's funny is that's why I love my job, because a company can hire me. I can come in, I can tell all their employees, hey, suck it up, stop being so selfish, and work harder together, right? The SEAL team way or whatever. But you guys are the ones that have to deal with the real problems that occur from that cultural clash that is just out of control right now.
So where do you see it in 5 years' time? Is it going to get better, worse, more distractible? I mean, everything goes in cycles. So.
Well, if our economy can stave off this recession that most economists are talking about is coming, I think that has a really profound benefit to our workforce. Because what you have now is you have, for the first time in the last 15 years or so, this really abundant need for work. Mm-hmm. And so companies can hire new people. They might not be talented. They might not be the right backgrounds, but they're hiring. And so people can get some job experience, right? And that's what we need. We need those. I don't even know. It's what, 1.4 trillion in college loan debt. That's right now. We need those kids to go have some 3 to 5 year work experience. And so that way they can come back out and prop up the next generation of businesses, right? Because if you go out and you look at a lot of even what's happening with investment, right? And whether it's angel investors or it's, full blown, venture capital funding, all the venture capital is shifted its approach to new businesses because there's been so many, failures in these, supposed wonder tech companies and stuff. So just getting money is back difficult again. Mm-hmm. And that is a big challenge. So I think as long as it's hard to find money, it'll drive people into a very abundant workforce. And hopefully, with guys like Mike Rowe out there and some other people that are really pushing for the skilled trade job industries to come back. I mean, Mike Rowe will tell you there are 650,000 jobs available in the trade world right now.
Yep.
But you have some kid that wants to start the next great tech company, but they don't even know how to code, right? Yeah. When they actually have an aptitude for their working with their hands. So if they became a plumber, they could get out and they could start their own businesses, and within 3 to 5 years, they're saying these kids could make $500,000 $1 million a year in these industries. So
easily. And you know what? Here's a real true test, in my opinion, and I've got some thoughts on the Generation Y conversation too. That here's a real test of what one's grit is. If we turn the power grid off for 24 hours, just shut it down. Shut it down for an hour.
Now you're talking my game. Yeah. Let's kick off the zombie apocalypse. I've got all my ammo. I've got all my guns. Let's get this thing going.
We're digging out the MREs and whatever. But so what's interesting is that, there's a lot of frustration in the workplace, just in general, not just on the HR side, but just in the workplace, is that there's been, quote unquote, so much catering to the Y generation. But remember, I said there's two groups, right? And the Ys are like, would you just please stop picking on us? But because I hear that a lot too. But what's starting to happen now is that since business practice, business law, communications, everything that we know as experienced professionals now, amongst the three of us, these guys are now coming into leadership positions, and now they're learning those lessons. So they're now having to go through the dynamic change shift to get on our page. We had to get on their page to get them in through the door. Now they're starting to have to get on our page because those business challenges have been there forever, and they're not going to change. Supply and demand, all that other good stuff, you name it, gross domestic product. How do you get investors to do this? Those problems don't and never will change. But now the forerunners on the Y, as they come into these leadership roles, they're really starting to see what exactly is going on.
Which is a blessing, right? Which is great for companies. The problem, though, the second biggest problem I see is that, the baby boomers who are leaving their companies, they're giving them to their families, or they're passing on, they're selling them off, right? They've done, what they did traditionally is you take, a person from my generation who's their top performer. Oh, now you're the COO. Oh, now you're your senior sales manager for, half of the United States. But I'm not going to give you any management training. And I'm not going to really tell you what to do because when I got the business, nobody told me what to do, and I had to figure it out on my own. So that's the way I'm going to do it for you. Well, we're literally in the crossfire because now it's our job. We're in senior management positions now. Yeah. It's our job to train and promote and prepare the next generation of management, and we don't have the management skill levels. No. Like I can't even tell you how many times I've sat down with senior VPs from organizations and say, and hear them bitch and moan about getting their people up to speed in the way they need. And I'm like, well, all right, well, tell me what was done for you when you took over as the management? How much training did you get, your management training? How much did you get? How much, and they're like 0. And I'm like, well, guess what? There ain't nothing in the training budget to teach you how to be a manager, so you can teach these people how to actually be focused managers and work hard. And so there's a lot of, and I think that's why my business is, business in, these leadership development courses online, why people are, why Jocko and Leif are blowing up, people are just, they're starving for something that they can take and implement that helps them with all this stuff. And unfortunately, there's a lot of charlatans out there that are selling, a lot of snake oil and whiskey. I'm
sorry, but what makes good leadership? I mean, what are the fundamentals? Does that change with the year or the industry, or are there foundational elements to leadership, Dave?
I think it's both, more so foundational, but you gotta know who you're leading, right? That's for us in our world, it's literally you've got a captive audience, shall we say, right? You have an individual that wants to do something above and beyond. They want to serve their country. They go through this insane immersion training that teaches them how to be efficient down to the second in every aspect, how to compartmentalize emotion, how to stay focused under stress, and then how to be driven to the support of the, your comrades, right? So for us, and you're not going anywhere if you got a 5-year stint or 10-year or whatever you got. You're not going anywhere. And you have this beautiful built-in hierarchy of the military chain of command. And if you don't follow it or adhere to it, if you just say one day, just, to hell with you, I'm not doing it, you're going to Leavenworth. So, I think every HR department in the world wish they could have that, right?
Oh, every now and again we do.
So, but
you have a case scenario.
It's an impossibility. It does not translate into the civilian world. So I believe great for me, and when I went out and started to evaluate, so frog logic is rooted in 4 main concepts, right? With some 2 other concepts that are attached to the main one. So the first thing I teach people to assess, evaluate, and then to learn how to embrace their fear, right? Because fear is the main root problem that we have within the human condition that inhibits us from all success, whether it's professional or personal, affair of things that inhibit us. Then I focus on the self-confidence issue. Now we live in a society now where we're so hyper focused on whether or not people are evaluating us in a good light, right? Especially when we're on every social media app, we've got to post all our pictures and get the dopamine response of a like from how cool our family photo on 4th of July was, or whatever it is. So we've got that pressure now. And then, and then at work, not maybe advancing your self-confidence is always under attack. I talk about, so I work self-confidence. The third one is team life. And the fourth one is purpose, really teaching people how to discover purpose. But the team life one, when I was doing the research on this and what makes a great team, I started going through every great team I could find in history and really began to evaluate, what were the core components that made these teams function at the highest level. And after you get by, commitment, the essence of all effort is what is the level of your commitment? What are you willing to endure in order to achieve your objective? And then the second is, how well trained are you for what you're being asked to do or to do with other people? And then the third is communicate. How well do you communicate the mission, the ideas? And the last one was leadership. Really, the greatest teams in history, whether they were doing good or doing bad, they all had this great central core leadership. And so when I started breaking those down, it became very apparent to me what I saw was essential and important. The first one that I really saw is that great leaders, they fundamentally like the chaos, the discomfort. They like the challenge, right? So I describe it as great leaders. Every great leader likes to be cold, wet, and sandy. And I saw it again. I saw it literally and figuratively. And I've seen it whether it's in professional sports teams or collegiate. I've seen it in athletes or business owners or whomever. It's that great leaders, they like the challenges that come with running a business. They like the challenge of trying to figure out how to, weather the storm of not meeting payroll, or how to generate fast business in a short amount of time. How to pivot in a changing world, how to, all this stuff. So they thrive on that. The next one was great leaders have profound situational awareness. You see companies that struggle are the leaders that are detached.
Yes.
They don't understand. They can cognitively understand what they're hearing in their reports or what's going on the front lines, but they're so far detached from actually feeling it that they've lost those cultural bridges that need to take place. Like, your leader needs to recognize that the situation that, Bob, who's selling in New York City, versus, Jane, who's selling in LA, man, those are completely two different processes and two different experiences, two different environments. And so if a leader blows those off and says, no, this is the way, just do it this way, it should work either way, really came down. And where I truly discovered that research, there's a gentleman out there, his name is Gert Hofstede. He's the number one, you could call him a social psychologist in the world, who has studied organizational and national culture. He's got this brilliant book called Software for the Mind, where he's interviewed over 10,000 organizations in every country in the world and administered these beautiful tests to see what, or based on where the organization is, the subculture, the nationalized cultures play a profound effect on how things will get done, and this guy is just off the chart. So reading his, it really became, you as a great leader can't deny the details of every situation, and you can't just apply one leadership technique. Like, I'm not just going to go into everyone and say, I'm going to apply the Jacko Willink leadership today, and tomorrow because I'm going to get sued after that, I'm going to apply I'm just kidding, man. His stuff is phenomenal. Actually, it's beautiful. It's really wonderful. I love the book, Extreme Ownership. I'm just busting his chops.
Did you feel the crack in the planet? Are you saying it on my end?
Yeah. I felt choked out as I was saying it.
Check.
But and then tomorrow I'm going to use, Dr. Daniel Goldman's emotional intelligence style, right? But you can't do that. Every situation's different, and more importantly, every individual is different. Absolutely. And so you have to pay close. Great leaders, they can tell you the details of every. The real phenomenon ones I love are old, really top end athletes like Wayne Gretzky. He can tell you, he can remember a period of a game, a moment, a play, the setup, what happened before, the players around him, who it was, from 25 years ago, as if it was literally he had just played the game last night. So, great leaders have that way to process everything and not deny anything, but to manage the details efficiently. And then the next process is, once they do that, they're more inclined or better prepared to inspire every person on their team to become leaders themselves. And that's really a substantial difference. There's so much, I think, insecurity in jobs nowadays, especially if you've got a good paying job, you got good insurance, you got your new house in the suburbs, your kids are going to good schools, man, and there's this hot up and coming young kid is crushing it, and she is just dynamic. So what do you do as a senior management? Do you jump all over that and help them become the best they can, or do you squash them a little bit, and do you push them down because they're a threat to your livelihood? And that's just human nature. Mm-hmm. So what I always look for with great leaders is a leader that doesn't matter to them. They're going to inspire individuals to want to take leadership roles on a regular basis, right? That's the process. And they'll find a place for that person. They'll reward them accordingly, right? They're not about their third home in Aspen. They're about empowering the growth of the internally, because they recognize that their company is because of the people they hire. So that turning everybody into a leader. And then, the last one is great leaders are willing to take risks. And again, it's the leaders that are able to take those risks because they're able to manage their fears. They communicate really well with their team. Their team is committed. They've trained for the change. They're ready. They're prepared. They know they've done the work, and so they take big risks. And the people behind them want to take the risk too, because they know the reward could be substantial.
I think something that you've touched on that I can only speak for in my realm that I continue to battle is, and I'm sure you've heard it, is that nobody wants to do the performance review anymore. But it's not so much that it's ineffective in and of itself, it's how it's administered. And it goes back to, leadership and setting the expectation. That's a big one. I mean, because when you're talking about so I had, it's like, well, I'm a leader and I had to figure it out for myself. It's like, okay, so we look as, you look at an elite group like the SEAL teams. Do you think any one of those guys, I mean, it's a great question to ask, because I would love to see what somebody would answer this with. But do you honestly think that an effective team like the SEAL teams could have possibly gotten to where they were by just saying, we're going to throw you in the water and good luck and figure it out? No, it's like what you're talking about. It's the constant beatdown. And what people don't know is that even though there is, in buds, there is, like you say, the beatdown that happens, but it's there for a reason, and it's there to cream rises to the top, right? That's just the way it is. And there's a reason why it's less than 1% of the entire Navy. You guys aren't made for parade. That's just not who you guys are. You're made to do something very specific that requires an individual at a specific level. So what makes that different than really trying to get an IT tech to a certain level of proficiency? Do you honestly think throwing them into the deep end of the digital pool is going to allow them to be successful? And I'll ask questions kind of similar, maybe not exactly in that nature, but it's like, if you want them to know something, why don't you just come out and tell them? There's a time for learning, and then there's a time for experiencing, but give them the learning and then get out of their way and let them do it, but be there for them when they start falling back.
Listen, as a person that is like, I put 257 young frogmen through training. I trained a pretty decent number of foreign commandos. I've trained case officers from the Central Intelligence Agency. I've worked with the highest level professional and collegiate athletes. I've written so much curriculum that my mind is when I look at everything, I see curriculum, right? I like to think of myself as somebody that knows how to train people, how to write training, how to create curriculum, and how to train them to be the best version of themselves. I think that lends itself because I've invested so much time in that and developing that skill set that I'm okay at it. Am I great at it? No, but I'm pretty good at it. So what I look at immediately when dealing with any organization is show me your training platforms. Show me what you're doing. Here you have this expectation of performance, but there's no guideline to it. Mm-hmm. There's no nothing. And you're expecting these young people that really haven't experienced any high level training, right? To somehow figure it out on their own, because you're doing the jobs of 5 people and you need them to come in and just get on board and do it. And then when they make a mistake, you lose your mind and you wonder what, fire them, get rid of them, get the next person in here. And it's just like human beings aren't like that.
No.
I mean, how long does it take, to where I'm going to be at a point where like I'm 100% comfortable, my kids are squared away and prepared for the world, right? Never. There you go. How about that? Never. All right. How long, when am I going to finally hit to a point where I feel like I am a master motivational speaker? Never. Ain't going to happen, because that's the nature with which I understand development and professional development. But I'm going to continue training, and I'm going to continue pushing and teaching them as much as humanly possible. And the hard part is we when under stress, whatever those stressors may be, our patience is minimized substantially, and out of that lack of patience, we the concept of giving people second chances and giving them a wide spectrum to fail in without any severe repercussions. That's where the growth comes into play. But people are not investing. Companies are not investing in better training. They just aren't doing it.
Nope.
So, you said that you started Team Frog Logic initially for kids. Mm-hmm. So since you have your own children, how do you apply those principles? Because they're the closest clients you will ever have. How do you
far? That's a great quote, a good question, I should say. So when I first started, I was horrible. I'll tell you that. I was gone all the time, and when I was home, it was just about being fun and just that being present, and that was it. And then they started getting older, and now they're in their child development years. We've got a 11-year-old. My fiance has an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we have 11, 8, 7, 6, all girls. And when with my fiance, she was the one who really taught me what parenting looks like. She was a single mom for about 7 years. And she was the one who was like, listen, like we'd start to have actual conversations about what parenting meant. And she's like, listen, you can have all these little cool sayings, but if you're not willing to apply them and actually teach them in a way that works for them and their little identities, their little personalities, then all they are just these rules, right? And we've got 18 rules that the girls have to recite for us every time we're all together, especially when we're dropping them off at school in the morning. And so, you can't just have them regurgitate information if they're not understanding how it applies to the life lesson itself. Mm-hmm. So that's where great managers come into place, right? They do real-time evaluation of their personnel, and they don't come in and blow them out of the door and say, wow, you just handled that customer as worse than anything I've ever seen in my life. You suck. You should go home and drink yourself into a coma, right? We don't say that, although it comes across like this.
Wow.
It's like, wow, you idiot, you need to fix that. Instead of going, hey, let's take a look at what you're doing. Why don't we come in, sit down, imagine if people were to spend 10 minutes a week with their personnel, right? And doing the real-time reviews mm-hmm. of what we're watching. I mean, we'd do a 10-minute run in the kill house, and we would spend an hour going over what happened in there, right? In order to learn. Now that's excessive for sure, and nobody has that amount of time to spend on but most companies, it's not life and death. Although hospitals, I've worked with a bunch of hospitals before where it was, and some of their profiles and how they did peer evaluation or peer review, real-time peer reviews was abysmal. And they thought that these quarterly reviews was going to correct behavior, even at its with immersion, it takes 60 to 90 days to change a behavioral pattern.
And that's perfect, because you are hitting the nail on the head right there. It's all about an individual's behavior. And so when you're talking about things like progressive discipline and performance management, you're not addressing the person. And I think people forget that, because so what I see happening is that people get stuck in the fray, right? They get stuck in all those little details about whether they're a Z, an X, or a Y, if they're purple, polka dotted, pink, or striped, or whatever, right? They start getting into those details, and then all of these narratives and all these stories start kicking in that really have nothing to do with the root and the core of what's going on. And that is, so moving somebody and helping them move the needle to get the desired behavior away from the undesired behavior. Yeah. That's it. It is very simple. Now the task may be a little daunting, but the concept of behavior is so important, because you're talking about a human being, and human beings, we behave our way into every situation, and we behave our way out of it in every single one. Whether it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, we behave. That's just what we do. So if you're not focusing on behavior, and I'm not talking about like shame on you kind of behavior, I'm talking about the effectiveness. Right, exactly. Yeah. The effectiveness of what they're doing and how they are working through the task, the job, the function. That's what is the key thing that's missing.
When I first got into the business, and there, behavior was a very strategic term, especially coming out of the depression we were in. I used to label myself as a behavioral training expert, right? Because when you break down our program, essentially we have the most efficient operant condition training program in the world. Unfortunately, we don't spend a lot of time with positive reinforcement. We do a lot of negative, which is the anomaly, and we still create what we create, which is the phenomenon of SEAL training. But if you were to go in and sit down with any manager or even any C-suite level and ask them, all right, what styles of operant conditioning are you applying with your management styles? They look at you like you got a third eye in your head. And it's a very simple thing. You can go to Wikipedia and look up operant conditioning and just understand what are the triggers that drive people to do things, right? Right. There's a great book out there called Habit, right? And there's a bunch of the Daniel Pink stuff is good. And which really breaks down, why we do this. There's a brilliant, my big thing is I'm a big fan of positive psychology. There's a brilliant guy named Martin Seligman, who was a protege of guy who founded humanistic psychology, Abraham Maslow, and then recognized in mid 90s that we were spending far too much time on people's negative attributes, right? When they're positive attributes. And so he began to generate this new concept called positive psychology. And one of his great proteges is a guy named Tal Ben Shahir, which is an Israeli psychologist who ran the positive psychology program at Harvard at one time, which was the most attended course in Harvard's history, the years he ran it. And there's actually, for all your listeners, you can go to YouTube and just type in positive psychology Harvard, and you can get the entire semester course online and video from this Israeli psychologist. And it is life changing because what he begins to break down is, listen, every human being is going to show up pulling in their emotional status. Whether or not they're going through divorce at home, they're struggling with their own health, whatever it is. Then you have the physical issues that people have to deal with in terms of fatigue or inability to learn a particular way or whatever. And then you have their cognitive ability to interact with people. And if people are used to one type of way, then they do that way, and it might be offensive to another. So you have all these interesting components that are driving this behavioral attitude. And then the company is supposed to say, well, here are the boundaries of behavioral we want you to experience here too. So that's a lot of stuff going on for a human being, right? So I agree with you. I'm from the mindset, hey, if you're experiencing challenges, stop all engines. Enough to where you have one auxiliary going to you where you can keep your business intact, but take a step back and let's reevaluate what we have to do in order to pull out the best in our people, right? Like you said, to inspire a behavioral change that enhances the company. Yep. And that really is, but just people don't understand enough about behavioralism. We all want to have the reward. We all are looking for the rewards every day, right? So if you understand what the motivational, I call them the motivational triggers, which you understand what the motivational trigger is for an individual, then learn how to pull that trigger for that particular person to achieve the objective. It's so much easier said than done for sure, but I think it's not as the psychologists out there want you to believe it's much more challenging, and everybody requires at least a minimum decade of therapy before we can get the best out of them. But I disagree. I've seen the most dysfunctional people on the planet do the most incredible things that you could possibly do. So I don't know how they correlate. What it is I think in our community, we understand, we imprint the triggers we want through the training. And then we know how to pull them as a result. And that's why we get the results we do. It's just, I don't think organizations spend enough time on it.
Right.
Okay. So one of the questions that I'm asked as a business owner, and I'm very certain you, Dave, and you, Brenda, get asked a lot of times, is for a first-time entrepreneur, what should people know before starting a business?
Me first?
Yeah, you first, Dave.
All right.
You're on the hot seat.
Yeah, you got it. First and foremost, that it's really, really hard, but they know that. They've had enough people tell them. The next is keep your overhead low. That is the big thing. I think I see people all the time. They go out and they start, getting interns or people that they want to hire because they didn't do the time or the effort to figure out how to do this or to do that, or they're going to hire a bookkeeper. They're going to do, just do as much of it as you can by yourself until you get the feel for how to make the sale, so to speak. I think that's really the key. I think people immerse themselves in way too much debt, way too fast, and I think that's the thing that just it becomes too overwhelming, and then people are just like, you have a couple dry spells, and you might get those people initially are like, hey, just hey, can you do one month with me and I'll pay you back after, or whatever that looks like. And I just think that's a big challenge for people is stay lean for as long as you can.
Cool. What about you, Brenda?
So all three of us are faith people, heavily faith people. And there's a passage, and very rarely will I ever cite anything. But there's something that I asked you this question earlier, and that was, what do you think your core gift is? And there's a passage in the Bible that says the gift will open the way, right? Your gift will open your way. And what I see happen all too often is that people say, well, I want to do this. And matter of fact, if you ever watch any of Steve Harvey's inspirational messages, he talks about this.
He's
and
good.
Yeah, he is. And it was really, really great. But if you can be driven by passion, but make sure you're doing what you're good at and know what you're good at. Spend time figuring out what you're good at, because if you go after what you're good at and build your passion around it, then you're going to be very successful. And it's like some people may want to start a franchise or something like that. It's like, okay, that's fantastic. But what within the concept of that franchise business that you're going off after are you good at? Because if you now that's the reason why I asked you. It's like, what do you think your gift, what do you think your core gift is? Because obviously you've built a very successful business around that. Chayra has her gifts too, and she's built she's an award-winning PR specialist. And that doesn't happen because she just loves something. She brings a talent to the table. So if you're not capitalizing on what you're good at and actually applying it, you're going to start sucking wind. You're not going to like what you're doing, and you're going to hate it, and all of a sudden it's this mistake, and you're going to feel like you're failing. But here's the thing, if you look at it introspectively, fail is just an acronym for first attempt in learning.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, so if you're not taking the time to figure out what you're good at and really build that, then bring in people and have them do the stuff that you're not good at, and coach them, set the expectation, all the things that we've been talking about, let them be successful and add and apply success to your company. Man, you're gonna be on Mars with Dave Rutherford.
Amen. Yeah, walking around in our lunar boots that don't work on Mars.
On the space-time continuum, because we wormholes.
Yeah, I love the wormholes. I'm all about
and the string theory.
So that's what I geek out on. I'll go to Khan Academy and start pulling up chaos string theory and try and wrap my mind around it, and then half my gray matter melts out of my ear, and I'm like, all right, I'm done with that.
No, I totally get it. And I think that's a bane also of a creative mind. The left, because you clearly use your right and your left brain with equal measure.
Oh, thank you.
You can appreciate the more esoteric and abstract, but you can also apply it to the more linear thing.
Yeah, I like to thank the SEAL community for giving me some sense of practical thinking. Otherwise, without it, I'd be a struggling artist in Atlanta or some stuff like that. I don't know.
Walking around saying, dude. So Chayra, what about you? What do you think is most important for a first-time entrepreneur before starting their very first business? What advice would you give them?
Well, referencing back to what you and Dave said, I'm a med school dropout. So I ended up in communications quite by accident. And I always tell anybody who wants to start a business, just like you said, Bren, do what you're good at innately. And I think how I applied dropping out of the science disciplines to do communications and media was because I really do care about people.
Yeah.
So one, I learned from my mistakes. You will make plenty of mistakes, and those are not the end. Those are opportunities for you to go, well, I'm not so good at this, or this is what I can do differently. Two, as a new business owner, be prepared to put in more hours than you can imagine and sacrifice, either financially or with relationships, more than you ever thought. But there is that kind of center guidance that you have in your heart of hearts and your soul of souls, that if it invigorates you with energy and passion beyond what you ever could have imagined, you're on the right track. Stay with it. Go with a good heart. Go with a service mind. And that can apply to your spiritual belief or just, we are all energetic beings. And if you plug in, I know it sounds terribly abstract, but if you just plug into that good life force, then you will know you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
Do good things for good reasons. The success will follow. Hard work, failure.
Amen.
Yeah, I think if they get too caught up. I mean, I'm a full believer in vision boards. I'm a full believer in writing out what you want. I mean, my birthday every year, I write what I want for that year. I fold it up, I stick it in my wallet, and I'll write 6 things, and 5 out of those 6 things actually happen. I mean, that's just I've been doing this for now 10 years. I can't wait to see what I want for the next year, but but that is absolutely true, is that what you put out there, it comes back at you. So if you put the good stuff out and you're doing things with authenticity and with integrity, man, that doesn't mean that you're not going to face your challenges and you're not going to run into a knucklehead or two, but you're going to be able to deal with them from a better source. But if you constantly are out there cheating businesses and cheating your clients and bouncing checks and trying to do stuff that's just all with a negative intention to it, well, you're never going to lead a peaceful life.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to lead a peaceful life anyways as an entrepreneur. It's just not part.
That's true, but I mean, like, with all this negative, right? But you won't have all that bad juju to be dealing with too.
One of the hard things is we human beings, we're competitive. And I think the greatest comment you made was about the sacrifice required. And I think when people start sacrificing their own sense of well-being, if you will, their own sense of balance to ascertain this desire, right? I've gotta do this and in order to have this, right? And I think people have a tendency to lose perspective on the true meaning of life, which is exactly what you guys are talking about, which is that sense of servitude, that sense of greater purpose. Mike Rowe, it was one of probably my favorite interview I did on TNQP, and he says, you just have to be passionate about the work, right? Be, and like what you're saying, be good at what you do, and do something that has good intentions to serve others in a positive way and help people in some capacity. Then I think you're headed at least in the right direction, so to speak, with that moral compass as your guide. However, man, I work in many industries where there's a lot of money going back and forth. And I certainly have seen my fair share where, doing $150 million deals, people will have a tendency to develop a mild case of moral ambiguity. And so
just a little.
human nature is human nature. That's what I think, what fascinates me so much about what it is I do for a living is trying to understand that much, much, much more in terms of, how we apply those pressures on ourselves, how we keep ourselves in check, how, I call it the negative insurgency, right? How do we manage that insurgency on a day in and day out basis so we can finish the day, look ourselves in the mirror, pray to God, and be grateful and thankful for the process that we're following right now, and experiencing the growth that we all look for too.
I have always loved, every time I hear the negative insurgency that you would come up, because I listened to you a lot on TNQ, and I remember the first time I heard it, I heard your voice. It was the first thing that came out, and I'm thinking, who the hell is this? It's like, wow, this guy is like off the chain. It's awesome. And then, I listened over time, and every time you start talking about the negative insurgency, I mean, and I loved how you phrase it, and I love how it's applied, and it's absolutely right. I mean, it's like if you get lost in that, and it's very easy to do, because I think the human mind is, I think it's hard to say if we're born that way, but our environments condition us to automatically go to the negative. And when I teach some of my courses, and when I say that people don't buy into that, I'll say, okay, great. And I always have two, those large Post-it note paper board thingies that you can write on, and the flip chart, right? That's the word I was trying to find. And I'll bring up two people, and one person has a red marker, the other one has a green. And I'll say, okay, audience, I want you guys to shout out emotions, just whatever it is. And you guys, if it's a positive emotion, you with the green write it. And if it's a red emotion, with you and you write it. And they do. And I do this for about 30 seconds, maybe 45 at the most. And then I'll stop and I'll look at them and say, okay, guys, which one of the two boards has more emotions on it? And they're floored, because it's always the negative. Or if I see it building faster than the positive, I'll stop and I'm like, okay, so which one's going quicker? And then they're just like blown out of the water. They're like, oh, God, we really are. I'm not a bunch of negative Nellies in the world, but that is very much it. And that's what we have to overcome, because if we overcome our own negative chatter about things and how we are about things, how we perceive things, we can't fix anybody else, but we can always address ourselves. And until we cross those hurdles, or at least are willing to be able to kind of eat some crow and take it in, just like, yeah, I guess I kind of did do that a little bit, but I won't be doing it again, kind of a thing. We're always going to get in our way.
Yeah. It's funny. If you're innately have a tendency towards negativity, even if you call it sarcasm, whatever it is, cultures that you operate in, there's always. And what I'm learning now is that some people just are much more practical, and it's easier for them if they set their mind in that space. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're fatalistic. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming in and they're just dropping a negativity bomb on everybody. It could be, there's a lot of factors in why people condition themselves with a negative based response platform, right? As a defensive posture, as to lessen the expectation of failure, all these different reasons why we do it. But there are, just through some simple shifts in leadership, management, whatever, you can begin to alter the dialogue, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really what it is. If people are at their core, generally have that kind of approach to it, you're not going to change them overnight. But what you can help them do is just recognize that, hey, for me, if we're interacting, try and choose terminology that has a little bit more positive connotation to it, right? Because so often we really don't we're not patient about how we express ourselves with one another. And I think within that, the immediate reactions that are most of our dialogue throughout the day, there's a reoccurrence of negativity. It's the way we evaluate the world, right? It's to keep things in check in our own minds, so it doesn't become too overwhelming, right? And so I think for me, and when I'm working with people that are overly negative, it's like, hey, let's just try and change the words you choose, right? If you look at it like this and generally do, maybe just shift a word around, and that way, as you expose or express yourself, people aren't hearing the impending doom of what you're emotionally managing right now. You know what I mean? And I think that is really driven by HR, especially driven by marketing, and most especially driven by the leadership, right? Listen, this is the style of company that this is. This is how I want people to talk to each other, and then setting the example of that. And that changes things pretty dramatically.
It sure does. And it really speaks to branding. You're absolutely right, Dave, because it's not only how you communicate to people. We as animals are hardwired to respond to the negative only because in the ancient days, it's what kept us alive.
Yeah.
Amen.
Are habituated to looking toward the negative. So that doesn't surprise me, Brenda, your exercise there. One of the challenges I have as a communications and brandings expert is the fact that we leverage that psychology to create those negative narratives that we say to ourselves, that we establish within corporations. But I think there are ways to mitigate that messaging so that it doesn't become that negative insurgency. It becomes more positive and affirming and acknowledges the human condition in ways that, yes, it gets your attention, but more importantly, it empowers you versus disempowering you.
Well, we go back to the fear concept, right? What is the greatest way to ignite action? As you
Right.
induce a level of fear, right? Right. Why do you wake up and drive an hour and a half every day through crazy traffic to get to your job? Well, because you want to be able to feed your family, and that fear of not, it's a good job and I won't be able to get another job, right? And then when you show up and you're dealing with the manager who's an ass, it's like, all right, I don't want to get fired, so I'm going to tolerate this. And
Yeah.
and how we communicate, and then how you communicate, with yourself at the end of that day. How do you, Native Americans call it smudging, where you take, this beautiful sage and you wipe it across your skin and it gets all the negativity off you. And, how do you smudge yourself every day? If it's really difficult, people are they'll go home, they'll drink a bottle of wine and take some Ambien to get to sleep, right? Instead of going for a workout, calling a close friend, or doing something that they, some hobby or passion they have, whether it's, who knows what, macrame, I don't know, whatever it is, making your own moon boots, who knows? But
bedazzle your own moon boots.
Yeah, and that's why with self-confidence, when in my 8 missions for that, have a positive attitude is mission number 1, right? And that is really and a lot of people will have a tendency to condemn motivation as a really just this overly subjective concept that we rely on far too great. But at its core, we all need motivation every single day. We need motivation to do our jobs, to raise our children, to feed ourselves, to interact with each other, people that we might not like. We need motivation to develop ourselves. So we need motivation to fight through the challenges of life, the next storm, business or in personal lives, our sicknesses, whatever it might be. I mean, we're just coming off of the Red Wings anniversary again, and that's a very challenging thing. And for I put through most of those guys through training and worked closely with Marcus for 3.5 years, and so I feel this deep negativity about the time. But Marcus is a guy who always would say this. He goes, "Man, I'm still here. I was a part of one of the worst days in our unit's history, but I made it, and I'm here. So every day I get above dirt is a gift." And so stuff like that from people that have a much greater perspective than I has really rubbed off on me. And so the power of positivity is a real thing. And it's up, each day you wake up, you can be positive, you can be negative, you can be neutral. And it doesn't cost you anything to do any one of them. And so you have to look at what you're predisposed for and why, from your cultural identity and background, your upbringing, to the people you affiliate with now. And if you surround yourself where there's ongoing negativity, like the HR department, then you're gonna have, it's gonna be more challenging. I'm kidding.
Nice.
I get to do the parties, Brenda. You get to do the
nice. Oh my God. So Dave, despite that last comment, we absolutely love and adore you. We cannot begin to thank you for coming aboard. It has been absolutely fantastic. And
thank you so much.
yeah, we're going to be blasting this one out everywhere because we want people to hear this message. And first off, folks, if you're listening, you're coming back to us and joining our insanity yet time and time again, and the fun that we have with it, check us out on prladyhrladyshow.com. That's our website. You can find us on Facebook at PR Lady HR Lady Show, Instagram PR Lady HR Lady Podcast, and on Twitter we are PR Lady HR Lady as well. And then, what you guys did on TNQ, we've adopted. Oh, sorry. Now it's the shameless plug.
It's all right.
Now it's a shameless plug. And Chayra and I take a moment to say what we're very thankful for. So we would love to have you join us. But before you do that, would you please tell everybody where they can find you and how they can reach out to you and what they can follow? And
Yep. My website is teamfroglogic.com. I'm on all social media sites at Team Frog Logic. And I have a YouTube channel. Look up David Rutherford, Navy SEAL on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I'm going to start posting a lot more videos on there. And pretty soon, actually this is the first time I'm kind of announcing it, but I keep it on the hush hush. I think I'm going to start my Frog Logic podcast back up again. So yeah. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's where everybody can find me.
That is fantastic. So yeah. So I have no idea what I was going to say next, and we can edit that one right out. So that's all right. What'd you say?
Now.
I know. And we didn't have anybody really swear. It was great.
It's a clean show.
And it was a clean show. I don't have to flip it to explicit, but so anyway, Dave, would you like to kick us off on what it is that you're most thankful for and grateful for?
Absolutely. I'm grateful for God's presence in my life. I'm very grateful every day to recognize that his sacrifice enables me to be a better me, and it enables me to be a better fiance, and it enables me to be a better father, friend, and what I do specifically is all based on that incredible forgiveness of my sin and my past life, and the desire and the ability to be a better man and to walk that apostolic path, that Jericho mile, every day is what I'm grateful for most.
That's awesome. Chayra, my dear, my love bug.
Oh, well, yeah, you make me follow him.
Yeah. I
am grateful to Tukashila, creator. I'm grateful for the gifts that I have been given. And on the heels of 4th of July, I'm grateful for freedom and the people who have fought for it. I'm grateful for my children and opportunities like this where I meet other like-minded individuals and professionals. And I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity with you, Dave, and certainly with you always, Brenda. So I'll abbreviate my list there.
Well,
awesome.
I am, it's really cool doing what I do in the volunteer work in the community. And, unlike you guys, I'm a guest. That's the way I look at it. And so I have longed for such a long time to find a community that would accept me. And I get accepted into this community. And to me, it is one of the biggest gifts. So being able to spend time with, Chayra, whose brother served on the teams, you who have served on the teams, is a real thrill and an honor. And I don't take it very lightly. So I love you guys both. I think you're both phenomenal human beings. Just talking with you guys, just for as long as we have, helps make me a better person. It also helps affirm the fact that I'm not always the crazy one in the group, so I do appreciate that.
Check.
Yeah, right. But really, I mean, this is you coming aboard and adding to the level of success of what it is that we're trying to accomplish is a great gift as well. So thank you, Dave, very much for taking the time and being willing to do this and being our first guest on top.
Amen. I love it. That was it. That was the hook for me. I get to be number one. I love it.
Always number one.
Awesome.